be alive.
A very beautiful evening to everyone. So today, on the 20th May 2022, as symbolic to International Museums Day, we are conducting an online e-lecture on the theme called "The Power of History Museums." As World Museums Day was 2 days before, but the value of museums and the research on museums, it should continue whole year. So today's our honorable resource person is Dr. Ambika Bipin Patel, ma'am. We heartfully welcome you to the platform of the history enthusiasts, ma'am. It's a privilege to have you on the platform of the history enthusiasts. And thank you so much for accepting our invitation and to be part of our group. And I also welcome all the audience who are joining us through this lecture. Uh, Please be active throughout this lecture. And I also welcome co-host of this session, Miss Manali Momaya. And I request Miss Manali Momaya to introduce our today's resource person, Dr. Ambika Bipin Patel, ma'am.
Thank you very much, dear Nidhi. It is an honor to introduce Professor Ambika Patel. She is currently the head Department of Museology and Dean of Students, Faculty of Fine Arts, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, Vadodra, Gujarat. Ma'am is also the since 2021 May. Ma'am is also the president of ICOM India. She held the position of ICOM India's secretary from May 2017 to April 2021, and also the secretary of Museums Association of Gujarat since 2013. She is also a board member of ICOM ASPAC from 2019 to 2022. Her PhD was on archaeology and ancient history. Uh, she uh, she has achieved several international fellowships and recognitions, including the K.N. Dixit Visiting Lectureship in 2016 at the University of Wisconsin Department of Anthropology, USA, or University of Wisconsin, USA, International Scholarship from State Museum Berlin, Germany in 2016, Andrew Mellon Conservation Fellowship in 2015 from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York, USA, the Indo-French Social Scientist Education Exchange Fellowship in 2013 from Foundation Maison des Sciences Delhomme and UGC at CREOPS Sorbonne, Paris, France. A UK Visiting Fellowship in 2013-14 from NTCIVA and Charles Wallace India Trust, London, UK. Cultural Heritage Institute South Asia Fellowship in 2007 from the Council of American Overseas Research Center at Smithsonian Museums, Washington, D.C., USA. Madam has also acquired travel grants, international travel grants awards, International Travel Grant 2018 under Staff Development Scheme MSU for CECA Asia Pacific Regional Meeting and Conference at Seoul, Korea. Indo-Pakistan Oman Shared Cultural Heritage Program Travel Grant in 2014 for Muscat, Oman. UGC Travel Grant Award 2011 for Taiwan, and so on. Ma'am has achieved, she has bagged the National Award HD Sankalia Young Archaeologist Award in 2002 by the Indian Society for Prehistoric and Quaternary Studies. Ma'am has to her credit two published books, six articles in international journals, and 24 articles in national journals, felicitation volumes, and seminar proceedings. She has presented 10 papers in international level, 22 at national, and 3 regional level seminars, and has been invited as speaker and resource person by many international, national, and regional institutions. Her research areas include uh, technology and use of copper, study of Harappan Chalcolithic copper artifacts from Gujarat, uh, and she has also conducted pilot research project for the International Scholarship Program at State Museum Berlin, and she has been a PhD supervisor for archaeology from 2011 and for museum studies from 2014. Ma'am has also coordinated several national level seminars, including seminars on textile, conservation of stone, conservation of paintings, and tourism management. She is also a member of many professional bodies, including ICOM, SOSSA, IAS, IHC, ISBS, and so on. She has been nominated for government assignments, including the University Granth Nirman Board, Government of Gujarat, and she's also advisor to Museums Project Statue of Unity from 2016 to 17. She has curated 5 exhibitions and coordinated collection management system, database development of Department of Archaeology and Ancient History from 2005 to 2013, and has conducted many museum education extension activities and workshops for schools and for special children, including blind and Down syndrome children, and participated in numerous archaeological excavations and explorations. Ma'am, we are really happy to have you on our virtual platform with us today, and we look forward to your lecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manali, and thank you, Nidhi, for asking me to do this. Uh, can you see my screen? Okay, thank you so much. I think this introduction by Manali was kind of too much, because it should have been very simply putting me as Professor Ambika Patel from the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, which I would love to always to introduce myself. Yes, when Nidhi called up and she said it is from the side of history enthusiasts, they have a platform, Nidhi and Manali together doing. So I said these two young girls are putting so much of efforts to do this happen, making history become more popular and making history dimensions of history reaching people. So outreach through a digital platform, and they're though they are both of them are PhD research scholars, but they are putting some time to make efforts so that the subject reaches the public and try to get the people to speak for their platform. I think it's a wonderful effort. So a big appreciation from my side to both of you. Before I start, so when Nidhi said, I was just thinking, power of the museum, and then we have been talking about power of the museum since last 2-3 days. Before that also, because last year when uh, ICOM decided, because they decide at least 1 or 2 years in advance, what is the next in the IMD International Museum Day theme, and the power of the museum has been decided as the theme. And then we have been talking about discussing about having brief roundtable conferences, discussions, dialogues, and things like that. So when Nidhi called up and I saw history enthusiasts, I said, okay, let me talk about history museums rather than talking about power of the museums in general. So that's why I thought of talking on the power of history museums. Every museum has its own power, and depending on the scope of the collection and the nature of the collection, the museum gets its dynamics. In a way, we call something as history museum, we call some of the museums as natural history museum, because they're the natural specimens, both flora and fauna, the ecological systems, the floral animals and plants specimens, and it's talking about the history of the nature. So the natural history museum, like we have legal history museum, where the history of legal dimensions has been taught. So we have a legal history museum in the National Law University, Central University in Gandhinagar. I'm just taking few examples. We have number of examples. So when we look at the museums, we have larger number of museums as multi-purpose museums, but we also have specialized museums. So when you look at the history museums, uh, before getting into museum, let me tell you one thing very frankly, because when you look at history and archaeology, because I've been a trained archaeologist, worked as a curator assistant professor for 13 years before I moved on to museum studies in 2014. So I know I've been digging, I've been exploring, I've been researching, I've been running a museum, doing a lot of activities, outreach, collection management, exhibitions, uh, all dimensions of museology and museum aspects. And then moved on to museology to teach museum studies. So whatever I've been doing practically will be in a way translated into theory plus practice. So we are trying to balance both theory and practice. in the Department of Museum Studies at the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. So when we look at the subject of archaeology and the subject of history, it is always uh, archaeology. Definitely, people you had a feeling, oh, what to look at archaeology, what to see in an archaeological museum. There are some sculptures, some other materials, which is so much stagnant. They do not communicate. They do not say their story. We do not know what. Many a time it becomes boring. And when it comes to history, people think, okay, history is a factual subject, history is for mugging up. But when you look at a history museum, a museum which has historical displays, a museum which has been meant for explaining history dimensions, it has its own flavor. When you study a book, when you study certain theoretically, and then you get an opportunity to display it in a museum. We have tribal history museum which is coming up. We have many museums which focuses on the history aspects. So now the point comes here is that how this history is going to be more communicable, history become more simple and understandable to the people rather than looking at it as a factual data. People think that, okay, chronology, year wise, kings wise, name wise, these all be very common notion for the common man. So apart from that, how are you looking at make history in a simple way, make history more popular to the people, make history more enjoyable to the people, not actually the other way. So if people enjoy it and then learn it, then understand it, I think it becomes more applicatory and more significance in the lives of humankind. So that is the way we are going to look at museums, history museums now. I will be touching upon some of the dimensions. I will not be talking about the types of history museums or maybe different kinds of history museums. I'll be trying to looking at history through a perspective of discovery, a perspective of looking history in a very simple way, and using museum as a space where you can go and have a look. You look at things not just passively going off, but look at them, try to understand them, so that the display, the mechanism what we will be using for interacting will be so powerful. It has to be powerful, then the history becomes very easy to communicate. History becomes understandable, history becomes enjoyable. So our exercise today, my journey, taking you all through a journey of few of the slides today for coming 20 minutes, 25 minutes, roughly, maybe more than that. We will be trying to see how could we see the museum through the lens of history, historical dimensions, and also reversely, through the history, make the museum more powerful, make the museum more communicable. So we will be switching over from two-dimensional aspects of history through museums and museum for history, and together making it powerful. I hope the slide changed. So power of the museum. When we talk of the power of the museum, we always think, what kind of a power? Does the museum have the power through the collection? When I say collection, the scope of the collection, whether it is a textile museum, whether it is a kite museum, whether it is a science museum, whether it is, army museum, defense museum, whatever kind of museum, the collection, the scope, does that gives the power to the museum? Or the power through communication and exhibition, the activity which the museum do, either the exhibition or the way it outreach, it communicate, does that gives the power to the museum? Or power through the conservation or preservation? Because every museum, as per its functional perspective, it has to conserve and preserve, because the material comes to museum has to be preserved for the future. So it may belong to past, it may belong to the recent past, it may belong to present, but all the material which comes to the museum under different scope, different nature, different formats, it has to be kept properly, displayed properly, preserved properly, so that their life has been taken care of, their sustainability remains better perspective, so that the next generation, the posterity, could take care of it, take benefit of it, as the present generation we are taking care of it and using that for our branding and our identity. same way the future generation could take the benefit of it. So in that case, does the power comes through its conservation preservation activities, or museums do a lot of extension activities in terms of education? Some museums do, some do not. This is a point where possibly the museums in India has to pitch in, where we really have to work hard setting up education divisions, education departments in our state museums and in national level museums. In the national level museums, some of the museums have education department, definitely. But I think this is an area where museum becoming an informal education center, museum become a supplement of the existing education setup, where you study something, but as a researcher, I know Manali and Nidhi sitting here, when they do some research, they have to go for a collection based study. You can't every time go for your own field explorations, and not everybody is a field archaeologist or a field historian or a field scientist, where you really have to get some collection to do your study research done. So research is going to the museums to to see the collections in the storage, in their reserve collections, in their display sometimes, um, and then go to the communities to look at their collection and study. So the informal way for the researcher, for the common man, for the school children, their curriculum, definitely if you look at the curriculum, there's a lot connection with the museum collections. The point here is that how the school and the museum getting connected to each other and take benefit of each other for mutual win-win situation and growth is an issue where we really have to work on. So putting that into the context, whether power of this education is the power of the museum, and in nutshell, when you look at museum is a social entity. It is for the benefit of the society, for the service of the society. By collecting, it is preserving the heritage and culture of that local region, or whatever collection it has. Like museums will have international collections, they have the regional collection, national collections, and the local collections. So they are the social entity for preserving the culture and all the about things which I just mentioned, coming to the scope when we are thinking about museum as a social entity at the service of the society. So what is the power? When you look at the power, I think all of this together makes museum a powerful, house. It becomes a resource center. It's a center for if somebody is interested, it comes to us. It's basically in between the person who is going into the museum and the museum. So it's a visitor and the museum together play the role, where you would like to have the attitude to go to the museum and look at the collection. Take your time. It's not like just go and come back, but have some time, look at the things. At the same time, museum will have certain kind of better facilitation and invitation to the visitors who are coming in. So then mutually this will bring in a very, very synchronized beneficial relationship. Then we can say the power of the museum has been transmitted or transformed to the society in a powerful way. So holistically, when we talk of the museum has the power, now the point comes, if we have seen all these dimensions which I mentioned right now, how we could make it more powerful. It is powerful with its collection, it is powerful with its dynamics, it's powerful with, but does they communicate? Are they stagnant? Are they dynamic? Are they vibrant? Or how are they functioning? Where are the points, or where are the locations, or which are the aspects, dynamics we really have to work hard to make it more powerful? I would take an example from Gujarat, because I'll be picking up some examples from Gujarat because it's my karma bhumi where I'm working. So this is a picture from Shares Folk Museum in Ahmedabad. This is just simple example because when you look at the display, it may not be that effective, because they have just displayed with many things crowded into, without much of labels and much of panels and other kinds of things. But not to criticize the display over here, but just to see it is actually showing a lot of material which related with everyday life of a community, of a region. So it's like documenting and reflecting through this display. They are just reflecting everyday life, many things related to everyday life of a region. Now, this is a time where cultures are disappearing, a fast modernization is happening, so there is an urgent need for preserving the local culture and heritage. Now, when we talk of this preserving the local culture and heritage, definitely what does this gives us? This gives us a lot of historical information to us. This falls into uh, historical dimension, still continuing because some of them are living traditions, some cultures are fast disappearing. So you have to really bring in that history through this object, through the museum. Somebody has to come to the museum and see, like one of this stone object which is in display in front, which is a grinding stone. Archaeologists may be looking at from a context where, looking through those past measures of using the stone objects for processing of food grains. But coming to this become a museum object. I think younger generation, I've been talking to some of them, they've never seen because they are staying in the urban areas, many of them. But yes, those from rural areas will be definitely knowing. But the point here is that, so in the heavy urbanization scenario of the modern context, documenting and reflecting everyday life is also giving a dimension of the historical perspective of the nearest past, or maybe sometimes earlier past. So, even a folk and heritage museum has its own significance to tell the story, the history, in its own way. I'm taking another example of from Gujarat itself. This is a museum which is known as Gandhi Kudir, Dandi Kudir actually, Dandi Kudir in Gandhinagar in Gujarat again. The most important thing which I wanted to highlight over here is the iconic architecture of it. It is, made in a conical shape, and it looks like a salt mount because it is a museum which is symbolically shows. It is known as Dandi Kudir. It's a kudir. It's a conical hut structure symbolically, and it is reflecting the Dandi March or the Salt Satyagraha, which is done in 1930. So it is the Gandhi was doing this march from, doing his walk, Salt Satyagraha walk, and symbolizing that this Dandi Kudir, which is in Gandhinagar, has come up. So it is symbolizing the freedom struggle. It's symbolizing the salt march, the salt satyagraha. And architecturally, it has been created in such a way, it looks a heap of salt which is accumulated. If you look from distance, it shows that. So the point here is that even history, a historical event which has happened between the freedom struggle, has been communicated so well, even through an architectural format. you know Getting inside the museum is a secondary thing, but from the distance, this is a historic landmark, historically identifying the salt and iconically made architecture. Even architecture is playing a big role to communicate history. So we can see how much powerfully a museum, even through its architecture, could communicate history, the historical dimensions. So this is basically the power of the museum, because it's up to us how we are bringing out the power to communicate through an architecture, through a display, through an education activity. So that's why I'm picking up different examples to bring to you to look in that way. So this is one example, viewing from distance how the Dandi Kudir look like. Let's go inside and see a bit of it. One more slide. Its unique architectural feature and experiential. It's an experiential edifice. Once you get into the, you can see it's of modern structure. Inside, outside you see the cemented white conical structure. Inside it's with a lot of iron and yes, wrought iron and different kinds of qualitative iron has been utilized for its steps and circulars and all this, connecting with its galleries all around. But the most important thing is the conical thing. What you have seen on the top there is an air hole which you can see even in the picture, which is directing towards the sky. And just below that, in the axial point here below, you can see a body, round circular body with a lot of water. So this is basically connecting between water and sky philosophically, and also connecting with the microcosm and the macrocosm. So it's basically not only the structure from outside, but even from inside, not the symbol history, but the history of philosophy, ideology, and a lot of cosmic energy which is coming inside the structure. And a lot of, the place is so much spacious, and it gives, you could contemplate the Gandhian ideology, the Gandhian principles, the non-violence and peace. Once you get in, you could feel that the space itself will be giving you a lot of breathe in space so that you feel calm, and so the ambience itself. What I'm trying to tell you is that sometimes you talk of non-violence, you talk of a lot of philosophy. The museum itself is giving you those historical dimensions to feel, and you could experience it. So it's an experiential edifice. Let us move further. Inside this museum, when you get in, the first few sections, it is a walk through village. So walk through gallery, you are walking through the village of Mahatma Gandhi, which is a Porbandar village where he was born. So you can see the wall depictions are showing the villages with pre-independent era, and then the small galleries moving on to it. So you will definitely, once you get into it, you are entering that particular time of pre-British, not pre-British, pre-independent time when Gandhiji was born, and you walking through the village of Gujarat, which is the Porbandar village. And history becomes so much convincing to you, so much enjoyable. You're not reading a book and understanding, oh, where is Porbandar, which is the map, which is the place, which is the year. But you are really walking into the village. As far as if you wanted to really enjoy it, yes, definitely a lot of effort has been done by the architects to bring in that feeling of, so a lot of upload to those people who have been behind this to make it possibly happening. And next is a 360-degree screen display. This is actually you're seeing from outside. The second picture below is the theater inside. Once you get in, it's a 360-degree theater inside. And you can see it is written as Salt Satyagraha. So once you get in, and this is a quotation by Gandhi. So in his own writing, which has been translated here. So once you get into that, the 360-degree revolving screen gives you the Dundee March. So once you are inside this theater, inside this digital screen closed room, it's a wonderful, amazing experience. After a few minutes, you will start feeling that. I think I would appreciate all of you when you get the time to go to Gandhinagar and have a look of this museum. So you get a feeling. There are a large number of museums gives this kind of experiences throughout India. I'm not saying that, but I took this example because I think I find it's very close to my heart. But yes, I'm not saying it is not there in other museums. Some wonderful museums now have come up in India to have similar kind of experiences in Parliament Museum and Prime Minister's Museum, things like that. And we are now coming up with a large number of museums coming in near future. Will have all these facilities. So inside that, when you sit as a visitor, all around the screens, people are, talking. They are running, they are moving, and it's something like it's a feeling for you. You feel that you are also part of that satyagraha. People are walking, they are on the route going towards Dundee, and they're talking, and then everybody is moving, and you will also get a feeling that you are a part of that satyagraha movement, and then you are walking with Gandhi and going with the rest of the community of that time. Wonderful experience. So that's one. Next is again, of course, this museum has its own limitation because it do not have original objects. It's only have digital applications. So this is another way we could look at it. But the point here is that making history so much enjoyable, making history so much understandable, making history coming close to your heart without any difficulty. So easily it brings you to that cultural historic period, a period of freedom struggle. And here is the village, this digital screen. You can sit, many people can sit here. So I'm just showing the screen, which is against you when you sit. It's a theater kind of place, a gallery inside, where these all sides will come up with different projections. And these projections will be one by one showing the life of Gandhi from his birth to his childhood to his, he's moving out of Gujarat to go abroad. Till there, you will get an understanding of his life. So this is also visually you're getting visuals, you're getting those sound effects. So light and sound and visuals, and that effect definitely take you to that time, that era, and then give you more effects. So it's a kind of an immersive engagement in terms of multimedia applications. Definitely thanks to technological applications and development and innovations, but it gives us an opportunity to develop the dialogues around life of Gandhi and principles of Gandhi so well, so fast. Uh, and I'm sorry, in between the things comes, I thought there's some message for him, but somebody's comment. Anyway, uh, so next thing which I also should wanted to tell you is this train journey of, there is in one of the galleries, there is a train trail. This train trail, they have developed a train because this train is very important in the life of Gandhiji, because when he was traveling from, in Africa, the kind of situations he faced with them, and then how he have been pushed out of the train, and then that turned his life, upside, in the other way down, when coming back to India and taking up freedom struggle and become a part of India's freedom struggle and become the father of the nation. So this train is a very significant part of the history of, that. And they have put up this train, and then as a visitor, I'm sitting over here. I am done, I think I went in some years back there, maybe 3 years back, pre-COVID situation, I think 2017. So you can walk into this train and sit as a visitor, but you are traveling inside the train, and the sides of the screens are also, screens keep coming and going with the different stories of. So every episode of the history of, freedom struggle, his life, his connections, he's traveling throughout India after he came back to India, and then his public meetings and his discourses, he's convincing people. All this thing is happening, you are sitting inside the train and you become a part, traveling along with Gandhi throughout India, and then listening to him along with the public. So I think you become a part of the freedom struggle. I enjoyed that time. And the kind of display, definitely, again, this is coming to the display, which is so much communicative. It gives you an immersive experience. So you can see the train, you can see where one can sit inside, and here you can see a screen on top. So the you once you're sitting inside the train, you are sitting across the screen. On the screen again, Gandhi comes and talks to you on his events of his life. So all around you, you're taking you back to that time and bringing history to this level. You can see now how much powerful even a historical theme, but museologists, the designer team, the technicians, the technology part, the designers, and everybody together, the concept, the communication, the digital, inputs, and how the whole thing's put together and make history so much effective to make the common man to understand and experience it. And this is one time experience, lifetime experience. Then you don't need, to tell them kahan se kahan Gandhi gaye the, where he traveled, which stop he stopped, which were the episodes. I think it's like reading a book 10 times. This one time visit will give you so much of input. So I find, to tell you something about the history museums, Dandikudir, which is the history of salt satyagraha, history of freedom struggle, which gives you so much. So every history museum can do this, provided you strategize yourself, get equipped with the technology, make your concepts clear, and how to translate that to the common man's understanding way. That is the most important thing. And there are certain wall hangings, those ribbon hangings with personalities painted on it. So you can even, encounter with the personalities Gandhi met in different time. It's in the next gallery, and you can walk around and see. And there are some wooden panels where you can have the quotings of different people. So about the times, it's like a book. You can open up the individuals, the events. Things has become an open book in front of you through its display. And then, okay. Now, from our example from Gandhinagar, I am taking you to a museum in Berlin, which is the History Museum in Berlin. Now, I was there in Berlin with a project, as Manali was talking. I was for a research pilot project for studying Gandharan sculpture from the Asian Art Museum at Dahlem in Berlin. But I also worked with this history museum for a few days to understand how this museum was displaying its historical objects. And more interestingly, I was interested to know because it's the Second World War history, talking about the World War history. So this history is a very, now we are seeing how Ukraine was happening and how things were taking into a different shape, and we were all wondering that maybe next World War possibly come up. So the Second World War, we know how horrible and terrible it was. So my interest was to see how war situation and history related to war is communicated to the public. There are so many, but I'm just taking up on one or two examples because it was. I find it's something interesting. I'm only standing in front of that bench and looking at some of the picture which I'm showing. So what you are seeing here is on your side there are some hangers with the uniforms. You can see the Nazi emblem on the shoulders, which is the Hitler's army's code. So these codes are belonging to various army officials of various regiments and various. They were holding different positions, and you can see at the corner bottom are the gumboots, and there are some belts and caps and some guns. Now there is no panel, no label, no write-up. What is there is a huge, magnifying. There's a huge board which is lighted from the back, so it's a backlit. And in the backlit board, they have arranged negatives. Negatives are the original negatives of the Second World War. And when these are small negatives. You can see how a small negative, now we have become the digital cameras. The old cameras, when you have those black and white cameras and the color camera rolls, and you can see how much small the frame was, all small frames. So here what is displayed is the black and white negatives, and on top you can see a black eye kind of design. These are the magnifying lenses. Now there is a scroll. You can scroll it up and then intensify the magnification into 250x and 500x and 1000x like that. So you could enhance it magnification. And in every line you have this magnifier. So what you have to do is that you stand on this. This is again given it's a creative situations where you are not standing at the normal level. Once you look at this codes which is displayed on the gumboots on the display case, then you step on to this small desk, small bench or desk or stool, whatever you say. And then you really have to look through these lenses and try to look at each of these negative frames. And it's giving you a kind of discovery. Oh, you look through those negatives through the magnifying lens. It's not visible, then magnify it up and see. But you could really locate some of these codes wearing worn by those people during that war. So these negatives are the war scene, and they are wearing certain so you can make out whether which regiment and which commander and what kind of cap he's wearing. Then you look back to this showcase and see, oh, it is displayed there. And it is really gives you really look at the code and try to look back to the negatives and see which negatives gives you that war scene. We could locate this specific code. And then just beside of it, after you move a little further, you can get I'll come to that slide also. You can get you can get even a walkie-talkie. You can also get a phone connection. Like there is a counter, not phone. It's a digital handheld device where you can see the pre-recorded commentaries related to this. There are recordings of the war scenes recorded those days and then recorded in German and translated into English. And then you can also listen to some of those war discussions. And then some of them are notices and directives given to the commanders how to start the war and where to go. And then it's something an amazing thing. You just have one code which is displayed, but one by one when you go further, you will see you're getting closer to the historical dimensions of the war. At the same time, not only the history and time and how it happened, but even closer to the individual who are playing a role of making the war further and their designations. So you can see how deep in the historical dimensions, understanding the status of the person who was fighting, and then so much of thing. And the record is the few quotes and the negatives. But see how they made it so much communicable. This is a picture where I should say the audio tapes here. This is my own husband, because we were traveling together those days when I was doing this fellowship. So here there is this device. He is just hearing the pre-recorded things. these are some of the recording extracted from the war scenes, some of them from the British broadcasting, which was happening those days, some of them from the German broadcasting, which translated, as I said right now. And some panels, you can see some of the letters written by commanders, some of the messages sent by them. So it's in a sequence where now you're listening. So if you did not see some of the things after listening, you will see, oh God, I missed out the quote. And then let me go back to the earlier negative and see it once again. That area, I'm just giving you one example. That small area gives you go and back and come back and then try to understand. And you really feel, okay, let me see. Let me get back to what they said. It's like history becomes so much enjoyable. Information becomes, it's like you really would love to learn more, understand more, listen more. Information, in a way, what I wanted to say is that we really have to blend things and see. My point here is that how to make history communicable and understandable to the people. History, through its display, through its information, through its techniques, through different types of mechanisms, and then the historical sources. What you see on the panel here are those posters of that time, the archival data. Even the archival data is the negative slides, the digital archival data, and the textile items which they have got from the war scene. So three powerful historic objects bring the history back, and then adding the flavor of the mechanism and the techniques and the display tactics, we are bringing history so live. So this is possible. This makes history powerful. History museums powerful to teach history and make people go inside and look at it. Coming back to India again, I just wanted the war scene coming in because that is a difficult thing. People think how a war. Coming back to another war, our Mahabharata war. Why I wanted to pull it out because this is in our own country. This is from the Krishna Museum in Kurukshetra in Haryana. I've been there for some work again in 2012-13. This Krishna Museum was also, now we are 2022. This display I'm showing the photograph when I visited there in 2012. Inside the Krishna Museum, there is, we talk about the Mahabharata war and how Arjun got inside trapped and the Chakravyuha and all. They have recreated the Chakravyuha inside. You can yourself walk into the Chakravyuha and definitely you will get inside the Chakravyuha and see that, oh God, where to get out. It's a game. You will also get trapped and move around. And then in between, if you look up, there is the Krishna who is standing right in the Chakravyuha and cutting across to the next floor and the next floor. If you go to the second floor of the display, you will see Krishna again. You'll go to the next floor, you will see the Krishna. So he is the pillar of the Mahabharata and the whole thing. The gigantic, you can see a little bit, you can see Krishna standing here because I wanted to show the first floor, the first Chakravyuha. The point here is that the Mahabharata war, I feel like childhood, I've been growing up learning about, hearing from my grandparents about Mahabharata. But when I went inside this Chakravyuha thing, I said it was a different experience, And then you look at the image of Krishna and then you move up. On the top, there is another floor which gives you a panoramic view of the Mahabharata war with a lot of information. Now, this is another way of representing history becomes experiential engagement. When I say experiential engagement, you really experience it. This is mythology. This is, some people say it's epic, it's story, whatever, but it's history. It's connecting with you, and it becomes so much enjoyable. Children may just move around and hit with some walls and see who is that. Oh, this is Arjun or somebody else. And all around the wall, you see the war scenes. So those epic characters, epic warfare mechanisms, epic, war devices, rathas, and then, weapons, it becomes, and then there are some places, different kinds of depictions. It's wonderful. So now the point here is that, yes, we have the capacity to do so. We can make our history communicate. We can make our history come to the people. We can make history simple. And yes, history has a power to do so. So historical museums have all the power to bring in that vibe, that knowledge, and that understanding. Again, I'm taking you back to a museum from UK. Again, part of one of my project. That's why I'm using this picture. I have this is from a museum which is known as Beamish Museum. This is a museum which is a site museum, which is a mine The mining has been closed by early 90s, 1905 or 1906. And then it has become a place where a lot of salvage archaeological material has been brought back to this place, and it become an open air museum. A lot of houses reconstructed there. Now, my point here is that there are many houses. I took one example. This is a period house. This is an elite's house. You can say period room from one of the houses. Now, here, so this house was at some place. It has been transplanted from there to come this open air area where it has been reconstructed again. For the visitors, they are visiting a elite's house of 18th, 19th century, or somewhere around Victorian era, beginning of 18th century, I think 18th, 19th century, roughly of that Victorian time. So this is a house belonging to Victorian time. Was someplace in London, transplanted to Beamish area. The most interesting thing which I wanted to share with you is that when you move into the historic house, any one of us will go to any palaces, historic places, we will walk around and come back. Maybe some panels, some guides will be there to tell us. Many a time guides will tell you masala-fied stories because it takes you in different world. But what we need is the true authentic thing. So here what you see is this historic house, elite's house in Beamish Museum. Let me tell you, there are many houses like this. I'm just taking one example. Many houses of many types belonging to different cultural context and cultural associations. Now, inside this house, this is a kitchen area and the dining part, which I am showing. There are two people. These two people are hired by the museum. Now, they are hired as maids. Their role is a maid, but they are hired as a museum employee, as serving for the visitors who are coming up. And once you go up inside as a visitor, they will give you a feeling of how that kitchen looked like during that time of the Victorian era, how the fireplace were working. You can see some of the blue and white porcelain ceramic on the side. You can see some of the bronze vessels. And the one who is sitting beside of her, you can see there is a bamboo basketry in which they have some buns. And they also have a stand in which they have put some cups. They have made some juice. Now, when you go there, they will talk about, if you ask them, they will talk about that, types of instruments used for cooking, vessels used for cooking, the way of life. At the same time, they will give you some bun and some juice and then some soup if you want to try. Yes, provided you have to take a ticket from the counter where you want to avail this service. Definitely nothing is of free. But the point here is that you get a feeling of, because these people are trained to cook and make that kind of soup and few things. So you could sit with them, take a chair, sit with them, have a sip of soup, and then talk about that time. So they are dressed up as that the maids of those days. So you will feel that you're interacting with the characters of that time. So they are playing a character role, and the place is a periodic room. Now history becomes, it is like an onion. It is opening up one by one, the layer one by one. You understand how the fireplace works. You understand how a mechanism of, typical gas filler looks like, instruments of utensil looks like, what was the soup and what was the flavors, how they made it, and how the elite was there, how many times they took the meal, and how these maids were serving the elite. So not only the structure, not only the utilitarian object, but the life of the people who lived that time and their history becomes so much. It's like, you really sit and enjoy. I'm not saying in Indian museums we have to do the Eurocentric model and we copy it. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just giving you an example. These are possibilities. We also could make our historic places more communicable, more understandable in a way. So just an example to share with you. Another thing, okay, we are now in the digital age. This is from the Museum of London, where it's a city museum where you can see the huge screen and then it's written People's City 1850 to 1940. Now the huge screen will come up with different people and then it will come up with small writing. It will make you to stand over there for a time. So big screens. The screen will give you the historic period wise times, the voices of people, like 1850, what was the voice, who are the main people of that time. So the big pictures of that people will come there, some saying will come, it will go off, then it'll come. You may have to stand there for 15 to 20 minutes to see at least some episodes. So again, utility of technology, yes, definitely they have enough money, and they're generating money through the ticketing. But the point here is that there are ways to do it. Only thing that make history more easy, what are the ways we could adopt? Before I end up, I would like to say, okay, so now this is the next point. I'm again taking back to India, where we had this railway tribute to Vivek Express, which was his birth centenary anniversary. The train was traveling across India, reaching to the remote places, halting at different stations. People were coming and looking at it. A biographical sketch, in the sense, you can say a mobile museum, a biographical mobile museum, where Swami Vivekananda, as the landmark of Indian history and his philosophy, his ideology, and how he took everything to Chicago and got world popularity and coming back to India, and the youth icon, and icon for the youth for inspiration. And inside the train, how they translated the exhibits and how the crowd looking at it. So it is like museum outreaching the community, the society, through a mobile exhibition through train. So history reaching to the common man. Common man is not going to the history museum, but history reaching them. Historical landmark of his life and his history. A personal sketch, a biographical mobile museum. Tribute by Indian Railways. Thanks to them, they have later come up with Mother Teresa also. But I had only example of Swami Vivekananda, so let me share with you. This is again reaching out the unreached, reaching out the common man. Even railways can do contribution to us. So now we really have to design who could be our collaborators, how to combine, how we'll make platforms, how could we join hands. That's what in the beginning I said, when these two girls said, okay, ma'am, come up and do it, I said, yes, let me do for them. It's something like we all have to open hands, welcome others, help each other. That is the only way how we could take the museum field further. And we talk of power of museum. I think the museum will get power, history subject will get power, the youngsters will get power only when we use the power in the proper way to network each other, help each other, and facilitate each other. So more effective communicative and outreach measures, bring museum education as a focal function, maybe little more volunteering programs. I'm trying for this because in India volunteering is not that well accepted, but we need to have some strategies, or we have to design and make some policies for volunteering programs, like people studying archaeology, history, any other subjects could go to museum and do some work, against which museum could give them a certification, and it should be credited in the curriculum so that they will get some credit and use it as an experience for their further growth. But the point here is that taking a volunteer, what is the limitation? How much work can be given to them? Which are the jurisdictional areas they could be allowed to help and work? So the people who are insiders and the people who are coming as volunteers, the outsiders, how could be a sync can be generated for a mutual beneficial situation? Because we see many of the smaller museums in the rural areas do not have staff, do not have financial strength many a times. So this kind of volunteering program can help many rural museums and smaller museums to come forward. Some research, some documentation, some exhibition setup, some content writing. Like you people, Manali and Nidhi, could make some online, outreach for them. Make them some online like visibility, so the public know about them. Their curated could come up and talk, or you could go and take some slides and something and make the museum reach the public, so that they also get some identity in terms of their existence. Once the identity comes, possibly the boosting up will come, people will come forward to help them. So I think the youngsters should take up that also, not only sitting at your place and doing online lessons. But I know both of you are scholars, researchers. You can do, as Nidhi said, she is doing community studies. So community programs, outreach, and also, not only documenting them and looking at their historical perspective, but about their health and hygiene and economic empowerment, whatever way you could help them through your platform. The holistic perspective, that is the museum perspective. We can't just compartmentalize and just look at history and forget the rest. history comes as a total package. So they should be having better living facilities, economic subsistence, or maybe some craft they are which they are not willing to follow up or maybe continue because of urbanization, but you want that to sustain, could support them, get a platform for them, based some research, some documentation, whatever way, small steps can take us further. And with this, I'll stop here. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Today we have gained some more perspective on the dynamic living organism that is museum, and how museums can be very powerful as a social entity, and how they can bring about social transformation, and how people can learn so much about the past, and have more sympathy towards what was there in the past and how it will shape their future. We have really learned so much from you, ma'am, today. Thank you very much for this wonderful lecture.
Yeah. Do I need to answer some questions? Any question from your YouTube
Yes,
listeners?
yes, ma'am. There are a few questions. I would like to read out a few comments.
Yes.
Shri Nandan Shastri sir had joined the stream. He has written, "Welcome, Dr. Ambika, on History Enthusiast platform." Nandan
Thank
Shastri,
you.
ICOM. There is a yes, Dr. S.Y. Somshekar sir has joined us, and Bijoy Shankar Chakraborty, and yes, Danish Mahmood sir has written, "Good evening, everyone. Good to see Professor Ambika Patel on this platform too. She is untiringly presenting on IMD in so many talks, seminars, etc. Thank you for this wonderful presentation." Thank you for joining us, sir. And
Thank you.
Professor Khalid Malik had joined us. There is a question from Bhargavi Katti. She asks, considering that preserving valuables of an age is one of the main mottos of museums, how do you try to preserve the lessons and values of the current generation where history is created every moment?
Yeah, Bhargavi, history is created in every moment. Last moment for me was a history because I was talking with Manali how to do this YouTube StreamYard technique, and then there were some hinges of slide sharing. So, what I do is that I take a snapshot and document it. So, what is needed is that documentation right now, because what we have for the past, we have the material evidences, and sometimes we are, as an archaeologist, if I want to tell you, you get a lot of material once you do the exploration or you excavate, but many a time it becomes so difficult for us to reconstruct those time because sometimes the language is not clear to us because we are still trying to decipher it. Sometimes language is clear but we don't have enough material and authentication to support it. Then we look for indicators to support us so that we could make the reconstruction in a better perspective. But sometimes we feel, when you look at the historical dimension of India, we feel a lack of documentation or documented, but we have not looked at it properly. So, yes, of course. So, for the time being, what you're talking about, the current generation, the documentation is the best thing, even for the earlier generation as well. So, as much as we could document and keep documenting and systematic documentation, it's not like document everything and anything comes to you, but what is so significant. So, you should also have an understanding of what is significant for us, what is there to keep and what is there to delete, because we don't want negative things to stop our journey. So yes, documentation is the best possible way to do it, but not documenting and keeping it, but start looking at it, relooking it. So it's like learning unlearning process. You really need to apply that in your present context, learn from whatever you learned earlier, your past, and then if you think that something has to be unlearned, do that. If you want to do something, relearn, do that. You want to add something more, do that also. So be open-minded, be hardworking, be dedicated, be positive. I think that will take you to more heights, and keep documenting.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was not only a great answer for that question, but also great life advice.
I
There's a
mean,
question.
no.
Yes, ma'am.
See,
You
I
had.
started my journey as a science graduate with physics, chemistry, maths, moved on to archaeology to do my archaeology because I was passionate about archaeology. And then I did my PhD in archaeometallurgy because I wanted to look at those microstructures under the microscope and see how metallurgical structures gives information about the technology. And then I went into museum studies because I was always hungry for learning. So I still look learning from Manali and Nidhi today in few talks. So it's like, then I find while doing museum studies, I thought, why not to tourism management? So I went into tourism management and studied and taught for bachelor's in tourism studies and master's, and did some PhD supervision for IGNO for tourism management. So, it's like, it's up to you how do you want to take your journey, and how you focus, and but still keep adding up your avenues and your interest, and then you feel alive all the time. If you ask me something on the scientific background of the chemical composition, because I do a lot of conservation studies, I have done some conservation fellowship with Andrew Mellon Fellowship in New York. I did with metal conservation. I teach conservation now in our department. So it's like, once you get into a lot of things, I feel you become more confident, you're fearless. And I feel for the younger generation, I think you have to work hard, and you have to be fearless.
Definitely, ma'am.
And
Your journey is really inspiring.
there is a lot to do, I
Yes, ma'am.
tell you, I did my, I was even teaching tourism management students in archaeology, because we had tourism as a vocational course. And yes, archaeology, teaching archaeology undergraduate and postgraduate level, and then looking after the museum and teaching tourism management. Then I thought, no, I have to move to museum studies. There was an opportunity to come in. So now I'm enjoying teaching museum studies, guiding PhD students, doing projects, helping many museums to come up. And then, and then as I told you, when you called me and asked for a talk, I open up my hands for people who needs me, not the people who actually on high profile with high museums and things like that, where advice is not just for advice, but I am there to help from the ground level, where museums needs me, students needs me, researchers needs me. I'm always there for anybody who needs. And then we have this International Council of Museums, ICOM India. Uh, uh, there is many. I would urge all of you who are listening to us today, go to the International Council of Museums webpage and just have little browsing of it and understand what is this organization. And because I don't have time to talk more about that right now. And then there are different kind of international committees and subject groups and expert groups, where you can archaeologists, historians, folklorists, anthropologists, different platforms you could join in, and then start opening up your avenues and get into international platforms, and try and use your time wisely and beneficially, at the same time giving back to the community wherever possible, and give back to those people. As I told you, I do a lot of work for the special children who are visually impaired, and then challenged, and also with mentally and physical challenges. So we started it as a part of our museum education program, which we are teaching in museum studies, where my museology students get a chance to deal with these people, and when they become the museum curators, they will definitely remember back that what they did in museology, and at least try to do that in the museums. So the museums become a place for welcoming for the needy, the marginalized groups of the society, whom otherwise don't get a chance to come to museum. They need somebody to help them to come to the museum and see the collection. So make museum more accessible and inclusive to the community who needs us, the people who needs us, along with the people who we are otherwise also serving. So these are the areas where I love to work, and I'm working, and I'm pushing my students, and wherever I get a chance to push the youngsters. So that's it. And thank you so much, Nidhi and Manali, once again. And if there is no more questions, we should stop here.
There is one more question, ma'am.
Okay.
Absolutely. As you said, we are living in the age of inclusivity, and definitely we youngsters also have that responsibility.
Yes.
There's one question from Dr. Amita Gupta ji. She has asked, very informative talk, ma'am. I have a curiosity about the situation of war and impact upon the entity of museums. What do you think, ma'am? How can we have a backup to save the antiquities?
Uh, what is that again? Amita is asking about, what do you think? How can we back up to save the antiquities?
If there is a war, what will be the impact upon the entities of the museum?
Amita, it's a difficult question to answer, because war and vandalism and terrorism are such issues that, we have all defense mechanism, but when it happens, just happens. And then you have seen now what is happening with Ukraine. The Poland, I think even the Poland and the nearby countries, they are trying to help those museums to transfer that material, and then wherever there are some possibilities, they are transferring that antiquities down to the underground and store it for a while till everything gets normal. So, but yes, definitely there is a mechanism. There are some international guidelines for that. But there is something what we all have to realize is that we think something is ideal and something is practical, something is feasible and something is possible. Now, when certain things happens, this comes as such a, we have rules, regulations, everything. We have policies. UN is there. Where was UN when this was happening? What was happening with NATO? Who was playing at the background? Who was playing? And I don't want to get into the the dialogue and discussion of those dynamics, but it is a difficult task. But I have certain guidelines and certain things, Amitabh, which I could possibly forward it to you. Because right now, actually, just because I have to go for another one of my family gathering. Anyway, so I'm actually in a short while in Kerala right now. So in my own place with my mother and family. So anyway, so I will, Amida. So Amida, if Amida is listening to me, I would get back to you and give you some guidelines, which is possible. But of course, as I said, guidelines are there. Then the respective countries and then the international platforms, ICOM, yes, definitely when this war was happening, the specific recent war was happening, ICOM came forward and then put a condemned and kind of like, but I don't know how much a condemn situation just give, what kind of rescue is happening, what kind of, there's a lot huge damage. Just simply go back to that, what was that, Bami and Buddha in, some years back. They just blasted it up. Everybody know that was such a wonderful, the World Heritage Site, so much of precious material, but they just bombed it. What could we do? So yes, in war situations, there are certain guidelines and there are certain organizations specifically working for that in connection with Red Cross.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. No. I think I will maybe for that for me. Right now, I don't remember there is a guideline even by ICOM. I don't remember it right now, the title, but I could pass on to you once just little browsing back and then coming back. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. Bijoy Shankar Chakraborty has commented a very interesting lecture by Professor Ambika Patel ji. Thank you, sir. I think we have come to the end of this lecture. There's so much more to learn from you, ma'am. Definitely, we will keep interacting with you. We will take guidance from you, and whatever suggestions you have given to me and Nidhi as youngsters, we will definitely take it up. Dr. Amita Gupta ji has written, it's great to know that you have done PhD in archaeometallurgy. Thank you very much, ma'am. I'm always inspired by you. And so are we, ma'am. So definitely
Yeah,
inspired by you.
for Amita, I think I will take up another discussion sometimes with her and you people combinedly on the war conflicts and how antiquities can be taken care of, how documentation is happening and what possibilities. Not only war, but all the
Other,
all the disaster situations we could take up someday. And thank you
definitely.
so much. Thank you. Namaskar.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely we will have a discussion on that. We have come to the end. I request Ms. Nidhi Katti to propose the vote of thanks. Then we can sign off.
Yes, thank you so much, Manali. Before announcing the vote of thanks, I just want to mention one observation. Ma'am did a presentation on mobile train museum of Viveka Express. So I got an idea that we can use buses also, old buses as museums, mobile museums, and we can transport them all over India. I just got this idea, thought of expressing it, and it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
really
CSMBS Mumbai have museum on wheels. It has
okay.
been sponsored by Citibank, and they had given the money. And they have given the bus. CSMBS Mumbai have designed inside, and then they have put up the antiquities. That was moving throughout the remote areas of Maharashtra and to Gujarat. They went back. Now they're coming up with the second bus. In Baroda, I should say the Sayajirao Maharaja Sayajirao's time, and later his collection has transferred to Baroda Museum and Picture Gallery in Baroda. Now, Baroda Museum had a museo bus. Can you think of that? It was way back in early 90s, 19, I think 1920 से लेके 1950, even the pre-independence and post-independent time, not 1920, sorry, it started in post-independent, and then 1950 से लेके शायद मुझे लग रहा है पीछे नहीं, sorry, I'm absolutely sorry because it has established later, but they had this museo bus. uh, फिर ऐसा हो गया, they did not have people to run it, staff shortage, or thematically you have to innovate and change it in due course of time, so that next time when the bus goes with a different message and different story, different theme. वो शायद नहीं हुआ, फिर बस पड़ा रहा कुछ सालों तक, and then now they don't have. So now this National Science Museum, the Council of NCSM, they had the museum bus since long in Calcutta, and then they had many. Now they're all science centers have museum buses. So I think you have in Bangalore, you have this the regional science center have. I think they have a museum bus. We really have to cross check it up, but there are wonderful activities they are doing. So hey,
That
already we
would
have
be
the
great.
museum buses in India. Yeah,
That's great, ma'am.
yeah.
So I'll take this privilege to announce the vote of thanks, and it was really a wonderful lecture, ma'am, and it gave us new perspective about museums, and it was really very knowledgeable and productive lecture. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, ma'am, in your busy schedule. Thank you so much, and we always need your blessings and support for the history enthusiast platform. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
And
you so much.
I
Yeah,
also thank.
stay blessed and keep doing good work, and then stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank
Sure,
you
ma'am.
so much. Definitely,
Yeah.
ma'am. Thank you very much for your blessings.
And I also
Yes.
thank all the audience who were active throughout the lecture. Thank you so much. I particularly thank Dr. Amita Gupta ma'am and Dr. Somshekhar sir and Nandan Shastri sir, S.K. Aruni sir, and Bijoy Shankar Chakrabarti sir. Thank you so much for being active throughout the lecture. Keep supporting us. Subscribe to our channel. Share the video. Thank you so much. And I also thank the co-host of this session and my dearest friend, Miss Manali Momaya. Thank you so much.
Thank you to Nidhi. We are signing off. Keep viewing the videos because we are going to come with many more discussions and lectures. Thank you very much. Bye.